It's exactly 2 o'clock, and don't know how many people are on call. But we should give some more time for people to join us. Can we give about 5-10 more minutes of grace before we start? Can anybody hear me?
Good afternoon, sir. I can hear you. You can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Can hear you. I think 5 minutes should just be okay.
Okay, 5 minutes. We'll start.
So we don't deny the early comers.
Okay. So we'll start precisely 5 minutes past 2. Is that agreed?
All right, sir. That's fine, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
I
good
hear you, sir.
afternoon, sir. Can hear you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Simiri of Enviro News. You are all welcome to the week 2 of the 4-week training program under the project tagged COP28, Strengthening Nigeria's Civil Society Organizations' Engagement with Global Climate Change. Supported by the British High Commission, the project is being implemented by the trio of Center for 21st Century Issues, Enviro News Development Network, and Society for Planet and Prosperity. The aim of the project is to, among others, improve the communication, lobbying, and advocacy competencies of climate change-focused CSOs ahead of COP28, which starts in a couple of weeks in Dubai, the UAE. The aim is to also ensure that the CSOs participate more actively at the global summits and also at subsequent summits. The theme for this week's training is key climate change concepts and terminologies, and 2 topics will be addressed today. The topics are climate justice and other related topics, and concepts of nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement. Our moderator today is Mr. Chidiebere Ugu, a dedicated climate advocate. He serves as the program manager at the Hubert Foundation. His role at FES entails collaboration with labor unions to promote just transitions, ecological sustainability, and the circular economy. Mr. Ugu's impressive work is advocating for climate justice on behalf of the people. He distinguishes himself in both international and national spheres. And now I'll hand over to the advocate, Mr. Ugu, to conduct the program. Over to you, sir, Mr. Ugu. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simire, for that wonderful welcome. Thank you. I would want to use this opportunity to welcome all of us to this particular program. I don't know if you can hear me, so that we use some reactions with the emojis to kind of, so I know if we're all on the same page. Good, thank you very much.
I can hear you very well.
Fantastic. So we're all on the same page. It's very good to be here this morning on this 4 weeks program for the 2nd week. It's also my pleasure to welcome all of us to this particular event for today. Of course, climate change has been something that has really looked that is looking on us, and also particularly those in the global north or the global south in a critical way, while those in the global north are just they're also feeling it, but I think the safest ground now will be the global south. Basically, we're going to talk about climate justice and other related concepts. That's particularly the topic I'm going to make sure I oversee. And Titilope Akosa is the person for the job. As we all know, most of us already know her. That Titilope, I'll just call her Titi for now, is the Executive Director of Center for 21st Century Issues and one of the alternate civil society observers in the Green Climate Fund. She's also a dedicated gender advocate and environmentalist, a community mobilizer, and defender of vulnerable individuals. She holds a law degree from the University of Lagos, from Lagos State University, and the Nigerian Law School. She's also a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, who can do more justice to a topic on climate justice and other related concepts. Titi also received training in sustainable environmental management from the University of California and has participated in the Internal Visitors Leadership Program in the United States. In addition, she pursued a master's degree in law at the University of Lagos and completed advanced leadership training programs at the Lagos Business School in Nigeria. While Titi has worked extensively on governance, health, environment, climate change, renewable energy, poverty alleviation, and women's empowerment at both international and subnational level, she's particularly passionate about addressing issues affecting her local community. As a result, she leads and supports various development work and coalitions within and outside Nigeria. And I can tell you for free that one of the coalitions that Madam Titi belongs to is the Coalition for Socio-Ecological Transformation, where climate justice and other related concepts are key issues that we are basically focusing on. Climate justice, as we all know, is a pivotal concept that delves into the ethical complexity surrounding climate change, extending beyond its scientific dimensions to emphasize fairness, equity, and the distribution of its impacts. Climate justice is a way of looking at climate change from the not too scientific point of view. At its core, climate change refers to the long-term alteration of Earth's climate pattern, which we all know, but also it checks primarily the issues or effects that are driven by human activities. Climate justice tries to balance this. While it shares both the impact, it also wants to share the responsibilities. So today, we're going to sit down and listen to Madam Titi to see how she's going to help us see this environmental justice as an overarching concept and see how she can connect it quickly with climate justice and how this can help us address the equitable allocation of environmental advantages and drawbacks. So at this point, I would like all of us to welcome Titi Lokbe Akosa to give us the to start the training. Then we take questions from there. So basically, I would want us to do some very few things. Number one, I would like us to, while we're listening, take notes to highlight key questions that we want to ask, and also drop those questions at our at the question box, like the text chat box. Drop them there. We can ask them. We'll ask them later. Also, try and use the hand signals as much as possible. When it's time for question and answer, you raise your hand. We'll definitely call you. And also, I also want to encourage all of us to fill the survey form that will be provided later or shortly, so that we can know who is here. If you did not register for this program, please, we would like to tell you to register, where we welcome Madam Titi. Madam Titi, if you're there, you can please start your session now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chidi. I hope everybody can hear me well.
Fantastic, you're good to go.
Yeah, I can hear you and can see you too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, my colleagues and all my fellow climate advocates and those who are aspiring to be climate advocates. Thank you so much for joining us on this training. And today, just as Mr. Ugu has said, I'm going to be sharing some important sessions on concepts around climate justice, what is climate adaptation, what is mitigation. But I think I have reorganized my presentation in a different format, but it will definitely address all the issues that are placed there. So if I would call on the technical people to allow me share my screen, then I'll put on my PowerPoint so that we can see what I want to present to all of you. And while I'm waiting for them to allow me share my screen, I want to start asking you some important questions. I know some of you have been involved in climate change, but do you actually really know what climate justice means? So if anybody has any answer, please can you please quickly share, maybe 1 minute or so? Hello? Please, I need to share my screen. Can you stop the screen sharing so that I can share my screen? Technical, please. Good. So can you give me access to share my screen? Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Yeah. So today we are going to be looking at key climate change and climate justice concepts in the context of the UNFCCC negotiations. I have reorganized it this way because I believe that a lot of us want to know more about UNFCCC, what is happening in that space, especially for those who have never been there, and for those who have been there who are still not clear about modus operandi there. So if we are looking at this concept, we have to see how they are being addressed at the level of the UNFCCC, because the reason why we are here is because we are mobilizing for COP28. And for us to meet at COP28, we need to understand what is happening here. We need to plan ourselves. We need to dot our T's and I's and say, this is what I want to do, this is what I don't want to do, this is what I will follow, this is what I'm not going to follow. So these are very important issues. This training will help you also to really get yourself prepared for what you need to know ahead of COP, so that when you find yourself in that space, you will not be moved away by the different crowds that you will find there, because I tell you, there are lots of crowds there. And if you are not purposeful and you don't have what you need to do on your plan, you just melt into other people's vision and missions there. And by the time you know it, 2 weeks has passed and you are ready to go home. Thank you very much. So today, I will first of all look at what is climate justice. Very, very important. I'm not going to bother you with big definitions, and I'm going to break it down to you. For me, climate justice is actually the reason why we are going all this way. We are going to COP. We are trying to discuss climate change because climate change issues are rooted in big injustice. And this injustice also had been part of all the iniquities we've been facing in the society. And then, now that we're having climate change is deepening it. So why is it that climate change is happening? So we need to ask that question. But as we are asking that questions, I want you to see what I have written here. It says, the world's richest 10% are responsible for 50% of greenhouse gas emissions, while the poorest, which is 50%, contribute only 10% of emissions. See, this is a matter of numbers. If you look at the numbers, can't you see that it's not balancing? Some people are causing problems, while some people are not. But all of us are going to share in the consequences of the problems that the 50% are creating. And what is this problem? Over the years in history, years back, developed countries have polluted. They have emitted greenhouse gases. For a lot of you who have been following climate change, you understand what greenhouse gases means. It is that gas that is damaging our ecosystem, that is causing the climate to change. So, and that gas is not just there in itself. Some human activities propelled it. And those human activities were more done in the past in the developed nations, not developing world, where me and you stay. Nigeria is one of the developing countries. Most of African countries are in the developing world. And we have what we call the least developed countries too. They've not contributed. And then there are small island states also. These are the different categorizations that we have in climate change. And all of us, the way we are in the world, we are going to be affected differently about this. But some people are actually responsible for it. And that is why we say that if we really want justice in addressing climate change, those who have emitted more need to do more to stop climate change. So I will read what UNDP said. It said, unequal historical responsibility that countries and communities bear in relation to the climate crisis. It suggests that the countries, industries, businesses, and people that have become wealthy from emitting large amounts of greenhouse gases have responsibility to help those affected by climate change, particularly the most vulnerable countries and communities, who often are the ones that have contributed the least to the crisis. Did you hear? They did not just emit, they emit to make more money. They have made all the wealth. They are very wealthy. We did not contribute to it, and we are not wealthy. Now, the problem is on everybody now. The problem is even more. So who is going to be affected more? Is it not those who did not contribute? Those who have not made money from emitting greenhouse gases? We are the one at the receiving ends. And this is the whole trajectory about climate justice. So for us from the developing world, we are asking for climate justice from the developed world who are causing climate change. And that is the bedrock of why you see us go to COP. We want to negotiate. What are we negotiating? We want to negotiate for more money to adapt, because climate change is affecting us. And how do we address it? We have to mitigate and adapt. What does it mean to adapt? To adapt, of course, means that the problem is here. There are some unavoidable aspects of this problem that we cannot avoid. So we need to find a way to live with it. That is adaptation. But mitigation is also that if we continue to do our activities in such a way, in a cleaner way, in a way that we don't emit much greenhouse gases anymore, we reduce it to zero, then it means that we can stop catastrophic climate change in the future and also help us to develop in a more sustainable and cleaner way. And that is mitigation. So when we go to COP, we discuss these two things. How do we support those who need money to adapt? How do we support people with money who needs to mitigate to ensure that people are not emitting as they ought to? So we have to use technology to stop dirty ways of emitting. We have to use renewable energy and so many other cleaner ways. And now we are even thinking of transiting to a cleaner society that we call, some people call it a green economy, some people call it what they call it, I can't even remember the way they call it, but most of the time you will hear that we want to transit to a green economy and development. We want to ensure that our economy starts imbibing the principles of cleaner and newer ways of doing things. Yeah. So we go there. So we have to look at other concepts. I've, in a way, explained the basic concept that underpins climate justice, but there are other important principles that underpins climate justice. One of them is respect and protect for human rights. In all these things, how do we protect our human rights? We know that climate change impacts on rights. Where floods come and destroy your houses, destroy your livelihoods, your right to health is destroyed. Your right also to food also is gone, it's almost gone. Your right to live also is impacted. And because some people have caused these things, it means that when the impacts are on us, our rights still needs to be protected and respected. We don't allow our rights to go with all the catastrophic impacts that climate changes bring. So it's very important that while we are discussing solutions at the COP, we must remember in all the solutions, the rights of human rights must be respected. These are very, very important. Then two, polluter pay principle and fair financing for climate. See, we have said it, those who have caused the problem must give money to address the problem. And that is possibly what polluter pay principle means. That he who pollutes will pay to clean up their mess. Not only clean up their mess, also help those people, human beings, that their actions are going to affect. A lot of people are suffering under the impacts of climate change today. People's societies have been wiped off. Languages have been destroyed. In fact, some people's languages have been wiped off. Some people's cultures have gone as a result of the impacts of climate change. And a lot of us understands when these terrible floods happen. It got to a stage here in Nigeria last year that tombs have been removed as a result of flood. And there were a lot of instances where the health issues also were exacerbated. So there's no way that tombs will be removed, that people who had died years ago, of course, we don't even know what is already in their tomb, and those things are removed, they erupt, and it could cause different kinds of diseases that is contagious in the community. So these are things. And if those things happen, who should pay for those damages? Is it not those who have caused this problem? And that's why we're saying polluter pay principle. And if we're saying polluter pay principle, it means that they must, if we need finance, they must provide it. If we need other in-kind support, they must provide it. If it is technology, they need to provide it, because polluter pay principle is not only limited to money. Support in different kinds, capacity building, it's also included here. And when we are talking about financing, we are talking about real financing that will allow local people who are on the front lines of climate change actually to benefit from it, because they are the one on the front lines. They need it most. So we're also talking about common but differentiated responsibilities, and these are very, very important. These are principles that are entailed in the UNFCCC. I think I will not dwell on this. You will see my other PowerPoints to explain it. Then we talk about intergenerational equity. What does it mean? Can't you see that when some people have emitted years back. Those of us who were not alive, we are now suffering it. It means if we are not careful, those who we emit now, some people who are coming in the future into the world, they are going to suffer it when we are gone. How are we making sure that our youths are part of this discussion? How are we ensuring that the generations to come are not going to suffer from our own carelessness and irresponsible way of living and emitting gases into the atmosphere that is going to cause them havoc in future? Safeguarding the rights of the most vulnerable and people and sharing the burdens and benefits of climate change and its impact equitably, yes, and fairly. These things are, if we have to share the impact, all of us must share in it. And those who have not contributed more to it should not contribute more. It is those who have contributed more that should do more, who has more responsibility to make sure that things are set right. Then full and equal participation, ensuring accountability and transparency. So we are going to go into this. And I tell you, gender issues also is implicated in all these principles. I'll go to the next slide. What is intergenerational equity and climate change? So I told you that I was just highlighting it. So if you see wherever you are, if you are seeing this PowerPoint, you will see what I have explained. Intergenerational equity requires avoiding discrimination against future generations in our climate policies and actions. We need to balance urgent and present needs with the rights of future people. Solution may involve representation by living generations and better integration of future considerations in climate decision-making. That is what it entails for us to really address intergenerational equity in climate change issues. So we'll go to the next one. And I think my next, I think this is gender issues. I don't want to go deep because there are so many concepts, but I have taken my time to do some, maybe about 3 slides on this. We know that climate change is not gender neutral, and women and girls are differently impacted. So women ascribe gender roles in society intersect with climate impacts. When we are talking about water issues, we know the role women play in water, and we know climate change is impacting on our water bodies are drying. Do we have enough water to actually attend to our sanitation needs? So if climate change is making water bodies dry, it means that there will be less water. In some parts of Africa, especially in South Africa, they are already dealing terribly with the issue of water. And we know when it comes to water, we women, we relate with water a lot. We take care of our children, we cook with it, we bath our children with it. The household needs to be clean. If without water, it's going to be very hard for the household to be clean. And when our children are sick, we need to take them to hospital. They need water. Everything we need, we really, really need. More women relate much with water compared to the way men relate with it, because most of the time they take their bath, of course, they will eat, but we will cook the food with the water. We make sure they are clean also. When they go to their offices, we are still at home. Even if we go to offices, we still come back to meet it, and we relate with water. And if this water is not available, some people walk far away in some other parts of Africa also to look for this water. And you know what that means. Then, you know, Paris Agreement referenced gender in its preamble and in adaptation and capacity building sections. Some of us who have gone to actually have looked at the Paris Agreement. I hope some of us have started to look at the Paris Agreement since we start this training. It's very, very important. It's a very important resource for you if you want to participate meaningfully at COP. You must understand what the Paris Agreement is talking about. So what is it talking about? Gender. It is referenced in adaptation and capacity building and the preamble. So please go and look at it, and maybe you can give us some feedback after this training. Then you have UNFCCC has acknowledged gender and climate change, and now has Gender and Climate Action Plan, which is under implementation. Gender Day is now celebrated at COP. You see, we have come a long way. At the beginning, of course, gender was not really taken seriously, but with the work of a lot of advocates from Nigeria and all over the world, yes, today, gender is being really considered. And when we are talking about gender in the UNFCCC space, we have Gender Action Plan that guides what the COP does in terms of gender. And it also gives us direction about what people do at the national level. So one of the mandates is for countries to come up with their gender action plan, which today Nigeria has actually come up with its own gender action plan, and it is a time-bound gender action plan. And I implore you to go online and download this gender action plan. And I think the gender action plan was actually supported by a lot of development partners, and I think it was really done by Women Environment Program Nigeria, who actually led that gender action plan articulation. And it's online everywhere. Please try and check it up and then look at what it is saying and see where you can plug in your activities and actions and see what you can do in terms of ensuring that all of us implement the Paris Agreement. Yeah. As it were right now, because of the way gender is now being actually taken seriously within the COP, now countries must come up with their gender focal points. For Nigeria, I'm still not sure who is the gender focal point for now, but we have people from the ministry, I think the NCC or DCC are there, who are the people who have been chosen as the gender focal point. So every country have their gender focal point. Nigeria too also has, and this is how to ensure that Nigeria also reports on activities on gender and climate change. And in COP itself now, gender is well recognized. We normally have Gender Day during the COP so that people will come and showcase most of the things they've been doing on ground to address gender issues within the climate change space. So a lot of us, we have done one thing or the other. My organization, we have done a lot of campaign around Women for Climate Finance. We've campaigned around finance for locally led projects by women all over Africa, and that we need more finance to get into the hands of the local women. And I'm sure if some of you are here, if you have done anything on gender and climate change, either at the Nigerian level or at the international level, please, you can quickly do a small draft and put it in the chat so that the organizers of this training can collect it and put it as part of the report that is going to FCDO on this project. Now, it is mandatory to have gender action plans for climate projects. Now that country has gender and climate action plans, now if you want to prepare a proposal on climate change, it is very mandatory for you to have a climate action plan, gender and climate action plan to support your project. Because in the past, we saw that people, when they want to do gender, it's going to be an afterthought, or they will just put a line in their project and no budget is allocated to you. But right now, the mandate has gone out. The Green Climate Fund started it, and all the other funds now have taken care of that. Everybody now is ensuring that whatever proposal is on their table for approval, they already have a gender and climate action plan to support the project, so that you can be sure that whatever project that is being implemented on ground has a gender face. Let's go to the next. I was telling you that climate change actually affects us differently. If you look at this from UNDP, these are some of the things that are different. How does it affect men? How does it affect women? We are looking at crop failure, household food provision is going to be impacted. If you are looking at fuel shortage, these are things that women work with to cook their food. We are talking of clean cooking solutions. And when we use fuel wood, it also affects our health. And these are things we need to stop. The household water provision, which I've discussed, lack of access to healthcare, forced migration, conflict. In fact, there's a whole lot of conflict happening now. And let's focus on COP28 now. What is going to happen on Gender Day? So I have decided to send this to you. They just sent it to us about 2 days ago. Gender is going to be celebrated on the 4th of December in COP. So we are going to have a high-level dialogue on gender responsive, just transition, and climate finance will be held on that day. Of course, apart from what UNFCCC is doing, all the organizations, the African Women Gender Constituency, of course, that is the constituency that deal with gender issues within climate change. I hope I didn't miss that, but thank God that I remembered it. So they too, they are going to have so many things happening. And this year we are going to have a pavilion dedicated to women and gender constituency. So if you find yourself in COP and you are a gender activist and gender expert and you want to know more about gender and climate change, please visit the Women and Gender Pavilion. There you will see what women are doing. Even at the Women Gender Constituency also, we have Gender Just Solutions publication. You will see so many good projects that women are actually implementing on ground. And it can serve as a template for you to even develop your own gender and climate change proposals once you get those booklets. Please don't miss it. Don't miss the activities of Gender and Women Constituency at COP. Please, we also have the African Women Gender Constituency. If you need a space as an African just to deliberate and discuss your own issues. So that's it. Then there are so many technical dialogue going to happen. So please don't miss it at COP. These are very important things for you to engage when you get to COP. So what is common but differentiated responsibilities? So the global nature of climate change calls for widest possible cooperation by all countries and their participation in an effective and appropriate international response in accordance with their common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities and their social and economic conditions. This is the text from UNFCCC. Before it used to CBDR. Now, after 2014, they added respective capabilities. It means that we are all addressing climate change at different levels. The level of Nigeria cannot be the level of South Africa. What we are facing in terms of climate change impact is not the same thing as what Malawi is facing. So based on our capabilities, based on our resources, based on what we have, that is the way we can address climate change. And I thank God that the UNFCCC text understands this. And these are issues that underpins the UNFCCC convention that is still in force today, and even with the Paris Agreement. So countries will have to be addressed based on their capacity to address. And we know in the developing world, our capacity is limited in terms of addressing climate change. If you look, I am going to be dealing with our NDCs. When I finish, you will see different things in the NDCs that shows how we can, all of us can respond. So the way Nigeria is going to respond can never be the same way that Ghana will also, for example, Ghana will respond. So the system also takes account of all this, and that's the essence of common but differentiated responsibility. So there are some issues that are coming up now, because before we have Annex 1 country and Annex 2 country under the UNFCCC. Annex 1 country are the ones that have polluted. Annex 2, they don't have any obligation to mitigate, but Annex 1 has obligation. But right now, under Paris Agreement, everybody has responsibility to adapt and mitigate. So we too must give our own actions on what we want to do to mitigate the impacts of climate. But let us not forget, those who are supposed to do the greater mitigation is from the developed world. So it is also the issue of historic emissions versus current emissions. We know years back, some countries will have not emitted, but right now, looking at the development trajectory, some developing countries have started to emit, and their emission is now going up. The question is, because we have been cheated out of making wealth from historical emission, does it mean as African countries, we must continue to emit just because we also want to make wealth? No. We can change the trajectory by developing in a cleaner way and also making our wealth in a cleaner way. We should not contribute to the irresponsibility that the development world has put us into. We should be a source of solution. And that's what we are saying. But now, the issue of historic emissions versus current emissions, there are issues that we are grappling with. People are saying China is emitting now. They should have a lot of responsibility also to mitigate. So, but then it does not remove away from the fact that some people are the cause of climate change, and they must be held responsible, and they must pay wherever they have polluted. So there are other issues which I want us to really look at. Concept, the global stock take. I know when we go to next week, they are going to do a detailed training on this. But it's also good for you to understand this concept. What is this global stock take? You'll be asking yourself, what is global stock take? What are we stock taking? If you hear the word stock take, what they call it, the issue of accounting come to your heart, to your head, and those who are involved in storage facilities. And yes, we want to take account of what is happening in the climate world. Are we on the trajectory to getting to 1.5 degrees temperature goal? It is this stock take that will tell us whether we're on the point or we are not on the point. And after the assessment, they will tell us what we need to do to meet the temperature goal of Paris Agreement. So they are going to look at everything everybody is doing all over the world and do the simulation and triangulate it, and then we'll come to know what actually is the state. As at last year, they said that with the level of actions that everybody has committed to, well, your NDCs, let us even agree that you will implement all that you have said. We still have not gotten to that temperature goal. In fact, we are still not on track. So, the global stock take, that is what it's all about. You can read my PowerPoints immediately we finish. We are going to share it with everybody. So that is the global stock take for you, please. Let's read it because it's like my time is almost off. I'm sure we have what is, and in COP also, we are going to be looking at global goal on finance. We are going to look at global goal on adaptation. We want to know what should be our goal, what should we be pursuing when we are talking of adapting to climate change. Then we are also looking at what are the finance for climate change. In 2013, they said they were going to have a double the adaptation finance, developed country promised. So where are we on it? You will remember that developed countries pledged that they are going to give 100 billion annually. Have we gotten to that level? No. So far, I think they've only been able to account for 80 billion. Not yet 100 billion. And as we are now, since the last time, I think 2009, they agreed to that. This is 2023. The cost has risen astronomically based on what we are facing in terms of climate risk everywhere. And that's why the issue of compensation for loss and damage have really actually come back into the agenda. It's a very important issue which COP28 is going to be addressing. So what is the global goal on finance? How much are we thinking of to help us to transit, to help us to address adaptation and everything we need to do on climate change so that we will stop catastrophic climate change? What is the real number of finance that we need? 100 billion can't do it again. Since 2009 to now, 100 billion is a stale number. So right now, parties are sitting down to do all the assessment they need to do so that they can come to that kind of global goal of finance, that amount that we need, so that the developed country will now know that this is what we need and how they want to contribute that money. So, being that as it may, we have other concepts, of course. And I think if you look at what I have said I have also discussed the issue of loss and damage. These are some of the important concepts that we are going to be negotiating there. And I've tried to define what loss and damage is and what are we going to be discussing there. We want to finalize the loss and damage fund, which the discussion started, which we won in COP27. So a lot of us need to also put on our campaign gear on loss and damage. And I know some of you are going to be doing a lot around loss and damage. When you go to COP, please let us know what campaign that you are going to be supporting. And finally, thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate it. There are so many other concepts, but these are the most important ones that you need to know if you really want to actually get engaged. I'm sure when you get on ground on COP, you will learn of so many other things that will enrich your experience as you participate in COP. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Titi. That was a wonderful one from you. I think we can use our emojis to give her the accolades that she really deserved. Thank you very much for bringing our attention to most of this concept that seems pretty far and distant away from us, but they're really good. So I don't know, at this point, I would like to open the floor to get questions, comments, and contributions while we're also scrolling through our chat to see if there are any messages there. So I will wait for questions and comments, and please quickly, there's a questionnaire that is on the chat by 21st Century. You can please do the questionnaire while we're also waiting for more questions and answers. So Madam Titi, thank you very much. You talked about mitigation, you talked about adaptation. Those are really big words, if you ask me, when it comes to the issues around climate change. And I really like the way you try to explain both and separate them in the same light. We thank you very much. So we're taking question and answers at this point. Please don't forget to fill the survey. And also I want to give the floor to Mr. Titus. Titus Aranilewa. I'm very sorry. I hope that's that went well. Mr. Titus, if you're still with us, we would really appreciate it.
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
Please
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Titi Akosa, for a well-nourished presentation. My own is on collaboration and inclusion or inclusiveness. We have the National Council on Climate Change Commission. And I'm just thinking this kind of collaboration, this kind of global stock take, the commission is responsible to lead the responsiveness of Nigerian government when it comes to climate change issues. So I'm trying to look at what collaborations do you have with this government body that is responsible for this reporting, and then how do we collaborate with them, and how are they included in this kind of meeting? I don't know if any of their members are involved in this kind of presentation. So that's just my concern. If we are going to fight a war now, just in clause now, if we are going to fight a war, we need to go together as a body. Yoruba has a way of saying that when the brooms are together, it is not easy to bend. But when we go individually, singly, we don't even know what this one is doing and what that one is doing. So I'm looking at how we can collaborate, to have a united voice, a united report, even in COP28. That's just my question. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Thank you very much. Madam Tisi, did you get that quickly? So
yes, I get that. He wanted to know whether we are collaborating with DCC and NCC.
Exactly. But yeah. I would like you to hold that while we take from Al Maruf and Simire, so that you respond to all three at the same time. Al Maruf, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Al Maruf Muhammad is my name. I am the coordinator of Peace, Environment and Development Foundation, PEDEF. I'm just wondering that having seen the climate interactive simulation on the actions that moves that we need to do to be able to draw down the curtain, and having watched some of the presentation of Project Drawdown, I keep imagining if some of the solutions that are being suggested by the global north can really lead us to our desired goal of having the temperature reduced to 1.5 or 1.2 as we desire. Because I look at such submission like decarbonization, net zero, and in fact, NDC, can they truly get us to desired goals that we are looking at? Because if you say just individuals should just determine how they want to draw down their emission, I doubt if we can ever get it right. What's your take on this?
Thank you very much, Al Maruf. So we'll move to Simire with his question, so we can take all three together.
Thank you very much, Michael Simire, once again. Thank you for your presentation, Madam Akosa. I was just concerned about one statement you made. You said that the $100 billion promised by the developed countries for climate restoration in the developing countries is now even too small. We've not even received it. And the impression you're giving is that the money is no longer even realistic. What is going to happen now? And it's not even looking as if we are going to even get the 100 billion. Now we are made to understand that it's no longer realistic. what are we going to do? Can we even still get this 100 billion? What is the probability? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael Simiri. Oh my God, Elizabeth wants to add something. So let's hear from Elizabeth, then we can take all three so we can wrap up the session. Elizabeth, please quickly.
Thank you very much, and well done, Titi, for that presentation, quite informative. I want to also, the clarification I'm seeking is also around the first comment by the first colleague that talked about collaboration. And I want to also say the collaboration, for me, I'm not just looking at government at the national, but also at the subnational level. And to what extent is this initiative collaborating with civil society organizations? And I say this because at the level of Africa, you were also in Abuja when PACJA came, because that's the one that did here, that I know anyway. PACJA came for the conference. Then statements, submissions were made. I'm not sure we've all signed to it yet, but they were promised to take them forward. It was a robust discussion. And then I've been seeing in the social media some convenings also towards co-op here and there. Then the question is, how united are we in our submissions towards what way we together push for COP? And I find your session taking, along that side. But then, what do we, if we are able to go, those that will be able to go, we will talk about climate justice, yes. What else, what are the concrete informations that we have been united as government, as civil society, working with civil society, that one thing that we all are going to be pushing, as Nigeria? That's just what I want you also to maybe elaborate more so that we know, because it's important. Some of us are the subnation now. Some of you are up there, but then we work together towards the common goal of Nigeria and the communities that we represent. Thank you, over.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that input. Madam Titi will take that, but I think we should leave the questions hanging and take them during the interactive session that is coming pretty soon. But meanwhile, I think it is high time we move to the next conversation. Please, your questions are well noted. They will definitely be responded to in due time. But since we're running a bit late on time, I would like us to move over to the next presentation. And I think we'll have the speaker. The speaker for that next presentation is Boyega Olorufemi. Yeah. Boyega is the project lead of Society for Planet and Prosperity, SPP. He has worked on several high-profile sub-regional, national, and international projects with interventions on circular economy, green recovery, sustainable development goals, energy transition, climate change policies, civil society organizations, engagement, and environmental affiliates to Okama Allies for Okama. Okama is an allied for transformation by 2025, World Resource Institute, and a whole lot from Boyega. He served also as mentor and also a panelist, contributor, and keynote speaker at programs organized by the UN. So he's a seasoned speaker. I think we would get the meat out of it. He's also been associated with the AU ECOSOC and also the UNFR Triple C. A whole lot in his agenda, a whole lot in his plate. This second session definitely will look at the concept of nationally determined contributions and the Paris Agreement. If you take a look at the conversations around climate change since after 2015, everything has anchored kind of around the nationally determined contributions, and also everything is hinged carefully and carefully crafted around the Paris Agreement. So the Paris Agreement took over from the other agreements, the Warsaw and the rest that we have. The Paris Agreement has since become one of the strongest points for conversations and also negotiations and also engagement when it comes to issues surrounding climate change, global south, global north engagement. So what do we want to do at this session? We want to look at that particular concept of national determined contributions. What are nations doing when it comes to what they've decided to put on their plates when the issues of removing when it comes to the issue of what countries are doing to make sure that their emissions are dropped down. So at this point, Goega, I would like to hand you over to your moderator, Elizabeth. Sorry, Elizabeth, I've done some of your job, but that's fine. I like helping people sometimes. So Elizabeth, please go ahead.
That's not a problem. Well done, and thank you so much for having me. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to the second session of the second week of the Strengthening Mobilization of Nigerian Civil Society for Active Participation in COP. I commend the conveners for the initiative and their supporters as well. Before call on Femi to take over, let me quickly just say that the concept of NDCs is central to is a central element of the Paris Agreement, which was adopted in 2015 during the 21st of the parties COP21 to the UNCCC, whereby countries were to make pledges and commitments by so they could by outlining their actions post 2020 towards mitigating the negative impacts of climate change and actually contributing to zero emissions. And so fast forward, in Nigeria, we know that countries were to do that. Nigeria also did their own bid in accordance to the Article 4.2 of the Paris Agreement, made their first submission and later updated. And in 2021, they shared their updated NDC to the UNFCCC. And so this afternoon, we're going to have Femi to give us some kind of overview around NDCs. And I take this as another opportunity to learn more on the NDCs and what we as a country, where we are exactly with the NDC. So let's, Jamie, to welcome Femi to take over the second session. Femi, over to you. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy listening. Meanwhile, while the presentation will be going on, if you have questions, feel free to write in the chat box. And then after that, we'll have opportunity to make further interventions, questions, and clarifications. Thank you, and over. Welcome, Femi.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Elizabeth, and Mr. Chidi for that introduction. I'm also still learning, and I'm delighted that I'm playing this role at this moment. And I hope you take one or two things away from what I'm going to be sharing with us. I hope that you can all hear me, despite that I have some distractions on the background. So if you can share my slide, Technica, I'll start from talking to us about the Paris Agreement, which is to which the NDC is at its heart. I also assume that many of us are leaders from within our respective sectors, and we are here to have engagement so that I will not see myself as being on top of this conversation. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change as it is. It is also was adopted by 196 parties at the UN Climate Change Conference in Paris in December 2015, and then later entered into force on November 2016. You would also agree that since the Paris Agreement also was adopted and then came into force, it has become a landmark in the multilateral climate change processes. And it meant that for the very first time that there's a binding agreement that brings all nations together to combat climate change and adapt to its effects. And the overarching goal of the Paris Agreement is to hold, for the goal to hold is the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and then possible effort to limit the temperature increase to 1.0 C above pre-industrial levels. Achieve net zero. Next slide. I put this together as key elements of the Paris Agreement. These are just a few out of about 10 or more of them that we are all used to, or that we have read or learned about. And if you noticed, I kind of distinguished the NDC to show that we're going to be coming back to it in a short while in this presentation. I am also mindful of the remaining time that we have left, so I won't take so much time. The global temperature goal, this is some of the items Madam Kosa already mentioned, that we aim to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above industrial levels, effort to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So if you try as much as can technical crew kindly maybe put the slide in presentation. I could read a comment that it's not projected. Another key element in the Paris Agreement is transparency framework. Another one is finance and support. The issue of finance has remained very potent in why discussing Paris Agreement and why the financing are not forthcoming. We had the issue of there's also another key element is the global stock take, which is also going to be discussed thoroughly at COP28. And of course, the nationally determined contribution. Now, each country already commit to its own set of climate action outlined in their NDCs, reflecting its ambition to mitigate greenhouse gas emission and adapt to climate change. We have an understanding that all of these that we have mentioned as key elements, there are other key elements in terms of technology transfer and capacity building, market and non-market mechanisms, compliance mechanisms, above all that we really mentioned. Next slide. So my next slide is talking about key progress that has been made from the Paris Agreement. Of course, despite the challenges, which I've also amplified in my next slide, we have seen some key progress. And since the adoption and the coming into force of the Paris Agreement, we have seen increase in attention to renewable energy adoption. We have also seen much discussion and adoption and policy development in the area of carbon pricing. We have also seen increased global awareness and advocacy. We've also seen ratifications and implementations of this Paris Agreement among nations. Of course, climate finance has also come into the forefront. And we are seeing nations, we are seeing organizations, having conversation and discussion, seeing how financing can be injected into enterprises that has green in nature-based solution. These are some of the key progress that Paris has been doing. Oh, I'm sorry, but I had to press my So thank you for advancing to the next slide. Now here I try to open up on what the challenges are, and then where the solutions lies. And it is part of the questions that was asked is, did we really have a feeling that we are going to achieve some of these the goal of the Paris Agreement? And that's why our engagement today is important. And then I'm glad that I'm part of this engagement that is leading us to COP, that will also lead us into COP and post-COP, such that we will have consistent advocacy that would make our leaders, global leaders, subnational leaders to be responsible. What are the challenges? We have seen diverse national circumstances. Of course, the issue of Nigeria is peculiar to Nigeria and cannot be addressed as the challenges that we face in South Africa. We have seen various NDC ambitions. We have seen various NDC's ambitions. At a point, you realize that I read the sentences of all the NDCs that were submitted, and there were variations. How do we address this? These are challenges. Lack of ambitious policies in some of the NDCs, and in some of the policies that has been issued in countries and at subnational level as well. So solutions, really. This is where our activities and collaborations is highly needed for continued international dialogue and cooperation. Aggressive financial mobilization, despite aggressive at the same time, despite the fact that we are always saying Africa does this less than 4% of this and we are not getting it. Are we speaking with one voice? And that's why it is necessary that as CSOs, we need to come together, find this collaborative level to proactively engage at subnational and also engage at sub-regional and extending that to global level. Of course, youth and civil society involvement, we must engage at this level to ensure that we provide solutions to these ravaging issues around the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. So this is more like a glimpse into understanding the NDC. And of course, in the run-up to COP21, there's this conception of intended nationally determined contributions by parties to the UNFCCC. Then the INDCs transition into baseline NDCs. The NDCs later become climate action plan to cut emission and adapt to climate impact. Each party to the Paris Agreement is required to establish an NDC and update it every 5 years. And this is actually where countries set a target for mitigating the greenhouse gas emission that causes climate change and then adopting climate impact. The Glasgow Climate Pact identified a large gap in November 2021, and then there's now a request that all countries should strengthen, update their targets and their NDCs in 2022. The priorities also for NDCs, the priority must be defined by different constituencies of any government to make it solid. And that's why at the time when Nigeria was to also send in their updated NDCs, I was part of the review done in Southwest, which was held in Lagos. And I was also made to understand that that was done across the 6 geopolitical zones in the country. But for me, I think it's something that should have been done across each state. And this is where we must begin to have a voice. And at the same time, work in collaboration with the government agencies that are in charge with these exercises to ensure that we have a holistic target set for each state. Imagine that a particular representative of one state wasn't available at the time it's being reviewed. How is it going to provide update from what is happening in his state? So the NDCs are the heart of the Paris Agreement, and we must ensure that for it to reach to be far-reached, it must be sound in analysis and the data that will help countries begin to transform and then shift to development that is greener and then that is also more sustainable. Next slide. So enabling good practices. Of course, these are just few out of other organizations that are helping countries out about how to actually strengthen and then enhance their NDCs. The NDC partnership Of course, they worked on the Nigeria NDCs, and they work with many other countries to look at their NDC. If you also want to know what exactly is the status of any country's NDC, you can use the Climate Action Tracker to check, and you're able to see what's the status of the Nigeria NDC. The World Bank is also providing this support. UNDP, the Global Climate Action Partnership. Next slide. So we're looking at, let us look at the Nigeria NDCs. So in the real sense, I think the very first Nigeria NDC was perhaps funded or sponsored by the French, and then until the updated one where we had when it was locally led. And when you have this happen, you imagine what they say, he who pays the piper kind of take the tune. And I think as CSOs, we should begin to have our voices. We should begin to make our voice loud to be sure that things like this, target like this, that has to be specific and peculiar to where we come from, must be led by us, must even be initiated by us, must be original, must be locally led, and must cut across all local governments, all states, and then ensure that what we have there is not what they ask us to put there, but what we see on ground and what we think if we do, we are going to make progress. And that's why coming together at this time is very, very important, and we are able to sustain it and make sure that we hold our voice together. Now, we look at the Nigeria NDCs to say 45% conditional, 20% unconditional emission reduction. That's the updated NDC. Then we want to end gas flaring by 2020. And as CSOs, some of these things that we have set as targets, to really have a platform where we are measuring this progress, where we are measuring impact, where we can call the government to order. And I think we should begin to look at these working together rather than working in silos to ensure that when CSOs are coming together to speak, or CSOs are coming together to present a position on NDCs, everybody is aligning with it and everybody is speaking with one voice. And when we're engaging every sector, when we are engaging actors from government and private sector, we are speaking with one voice and we are speaking directly into data. 2020, we promised this. 2023, where are we? We'd expect that we should have this one. I think these are the benchmarks we should begin to set, to let people know that we are aware. Don't think that we are not aware. For me, I decided to make us have from agreement. Next slide, please. From agreement to engagement. Can we agree? What can we agree on today? COP28 is coming. What has been the progress made? I mean, sharing the example of the Nigeria NDC, can we say it's ambitious? Yes, it's ambitious, but are we making progress? So as CSOs, what do you think we can agree to do to ensure that the key elements of the Paris Agreement and the target that we have set with our NDCs are fulfilled for the climate vulnerable countries, for example, Nigeria? I'm trying to say, I'm opening the floor so that let it not be that I'm the only one that's speaking, then we can have our own dialogue. And whatever it is that we put together and we agree today, will form part of what we are going to be sending out there at the end of this session to say, we had this session today, and these are the things we talked about, and then we discussed. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to us having that engagement on what we should agree on the road to COP28.
Okay. Thank you very much, Femi, for that elaborate and informative presentation. You started by highlighting overview of the NDCs, and you went further to give us details about it. You talked about the key progress that has been made. You talked about the challenges and the solutions. You talked about even enabling good practices. And one thing that I came across, to me, all of the sections that you highlighted on the NDCs is the issue of the civil society uniting, coming from one front to look at how well we are doing and what the issues that are there for us to engage with. For instance, you emphasize the issue of what who sponsored the initial NDCs and whether what was supposed to be there contained is what we think it should have been. And up to this point, the point of CSOs engaging, it kept coming up. And for me, that was the major take home about your presentation, because if we look inwards, where are we regarding engaging with government, holding them accountable, even regarding the NDCs? What to the level to which is just been renewed? Yes, this may be like 2 years now, but can we really say we've engaged and we know the extent to which and what should be, even in terms of where we are on the ground, especially having to do with the issues of building resilience, and also the issue of people being able to, move on and be able to work towards securing their livelihoods? Because for us, and for me, where I stand, that's just what it is for us, even in the whole engagement on climate action. So now we are going to open the floor for questions. We are going to open the floor for clarifications and interventions. This is our own space. So let us feel free to make interventions, if it's to add more to what he has said, to clarify, and also to seek for questions, to ask questions moving forward, the interaction, even as we prepare towards COP, because I wouldn't be the first to ask a question, but I have a question I'm going to ask Benga, Femi, and also the conveners moving forward this whole agenda. So the floor is open, and I can see Philip Jackpot. I can see your hand up. Go ahead and make your intervention quickly. Thank you. Over.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you and thank the last speaker. I think most of what you mentioned are what we already have been talking about, not just for this COP, but before the previous COPs. Is the same thing we've been talking about. But I think there's a missing link, and I don't think we should tag along with government all the time in this whole climate discourse and the need to engage, especially on what frontline communities expect. Now, most of us know these frontline communities. In Lagos, for instance, you have Legushi, Okunwafa, those communities that are under threat of the Atlantic. You go to Ondo State, there's Ayetoro, across the entire Niger Delta. Now, if you go to those communities, if you talk to people, the engagement that we want at that level is not happening. What government essentially is doing is just talking, and then they call civil society to come and endorse those things. When government came up with the idea of 2060 for the net zero attainment, was that what civil society wanted? It was not what we wanted. In fact, if we wanted net zero, we wanted it immediately. But then that's what when the last speaker was speaking, that's the thing I picked out. That engagement between us and the government is really not happening the way it should. What is happening is that government takes a position, and then they call us and they want us to endorse those things. When we are heading towards the COP, we see some semblance of action. Then at the end of the day, we come back home again. It's the same thing with the government sets up. They have their priorities. We are not, they don't really take what we are advancing into cognizance. And I think we need to really work on this particular aspect. So it is not all the drama when the cops are approaching or the IMBs, and then after that, nothing else happens again. They're engaging at the local levels in these communities I've mentioned. Let us do our work, go to those communities and ask if the government is engaging them. Those engagements are not happening. People are left on their own. And the discussion is high-level discussion. Government is going to do this, government is going to do this. What they are really doing concretely, you don't see it. So I think we don't need to tag along with government, but continue to speak through to power. Look, the engaging at the local level, we are the ones as civil society that engage at that level. And we are not seeing government presence there. And I think it is very, very important going forward that government presence should be felt. That community government engaging, we should continue to advance it because it's not happening, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. And I think there is no one else indicating to talk. So I'll ask Femi to provide, a response to your concern. Thank you. Over. Let's keep the questions coming. If you would like to make an intervention, let's have you raise your hand. Thank you. Over.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Elizabeth. And maybe quickly, my first name is Boyega, and my surname is Olorunfemi. I think I should also give the floor to Madam Akosa to maybe provide some intervention on the questions that we set aside. So for us here, and why we are doing this is that we have seen this gap, and then and we felt there is need to actually create an active engagement. Now, not just creating, and just like I had mentioned earlier, we are taking this to this COP. We want to also ensure that CSOs that will be participating in COP participate in COP actively, not just attending any of the program or event for just attending. We are attending and we are expecting that you are going to bring back feedback. What are those things that were actively mentioned? What were those key words that we are expecting to be happening in conversations that are not happening? And at the end, you are able to come up to
We've lost you, Boyega. Hello, can you hear me? We've lost you. Okay, so while we are waiting for him to regain access, let's allow Madam Titi to respond to some of the questions that were earlier advanced, and then we take the other questions. But Boyega, can you hear us?
Okay, I think I can hear you now.
Okay, welcome back.
Yeah, I can hear you. So I think Mr. Philip made a very good intervention there, which of course is at the same time re-emphasizing the goals and objectives of this engagement. And we are working together to ensure that we provide that formidable front to engage, and then ensure that there are feedbacks, there are results at the end of the day. So thank you.
Then let's allow Madam Titi Akosa to respond to some of the questions that were advanced earlier. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Madam Elizabeth. Yeah, and I want to thank all of you for those engaging questions. It shows that we're actually very attentive to what we are discussing, and there's a whole lot of interest in all these issues. So I think I want to really respond to the issue of collaboration with NCC and DCC. You see, this project, it took us some time before we started. We ought to have started a long time ago, but we were trying to make sure that we dot the T's and I's and ensure that we understand the dividing lines
So it's not that we don't want to collaborate with NCC and DCC. In fact, there's a particular portion of this project, especially where we are going to have the pre-COP meeting that we are going to have. And we are going to have it in collaboration with NCC and DCC. And we also had some rules in terms of how we can collaborate from our support funders. So we need to follow those rules also. And I want to also agree with Philip Chappo that we as civil society must have our space distinct from government space. Let us first of all talk to ourselves, collaborate amongst ourselves, and then that is where we can now have a united front. When we wanted to start this project, I remember some of you actually called you, how can we collaborate? But after sending a mail, I had to send out the opinion of FSCDO. So they were like, how do we differentiate what you are bringing on to the table with our funds and what others are bringing? So at that level, I needed to wait a bit also to get some better clarifications. That doesn't mean that we are still not going to collaborate with those of you who have, maybe some of you already have planned to do a pre-COP. At this point in time, we want to know what you want to do so that all of us can do it together. And that one has been settled. But we don't know who is doing what. So we still have to engage with some of you who have any program pre-COP and post-COP. Some people said they have post-COP. Some people said they have pre. So we need to look at it and then sum up our discussions and agree on how to go about it in a joint manner. So it's not that we won't want to collaborate, but we have an agreement that we have signed with FCDO and we must follow it to the letter. Then again, please, let us not deceive ourselves. Because we are all doing climate change does not mean that we have the same purpose and the same thing we want to do. Some people don't want to collaborate and you can't force them to collaborate. Some people want to go it alone and that's fine. It's okay. If people want to do their things on their own, fine. Maybe they already have an international organization they are linked to, and they also have some maybe terms of agreement or terms of reference on how to go about COP, which, of course, by the time they discuss with us, does not align with us. Please, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We all have different reasons for doing our things. We all have different objectives, and I think we can all thrive. Because if they cannot engage with me, they can engage with other people, and those people can also give them the most important information we are giving also to you, because they too also are going to the same COP. And on the ground in COP, we all meet there, whether we like it or not. And if you go to COP, you will see everybody has their agenda. Even during the day of action, people carry different flags that resonate with what they are campaigning for. And that is diversity. And we cannot stop those diversity. So all of us cannot think the same way, and we cannot be doing the same thing. It's also good for climate action, for people to have different actions and different movements, different coalitions, so that if I cannot reach each advocate on a particular issue, others can take it up and have a win on it. So this issue of collaboration, please, this is the way we take it. Please, if others don't want to join, fine. If others want to go it alone, fine. Please, it's good for all of us. It's also good for climate action. Thank you. Then there's a question on how do we get to 1.5 degrees? Honestly, between me and you, I don't have that answer. All I know is that countries need to accelerate actions. And when we talk about action, we mean real action, not false solutions, not greenwashing. Real actions that will take us to the real zero that we ask for. Very, very important. And 1.5 degrees is not just a number. We must understand that. If we are looking at it as number, it's simple. You can put it on your Bible and write it on the table. You can write it everywhere. But actually working towards it is where the devil is. The devil is always in the detail, but don't mind me, I'm a Christian, I don't believe in that. I always say God is always in the details. So please, we need to look at what countries are doing, and most importantly, what is our own country doing to also get to this net zero. Some people are even arguing over net zero or whether real zero, I say, even if it is net zero, are we even there on that net zero? Agreeing that it's a net zero that we are thinking of. Are we on the track to that net zero? Of course, we are not. If you look at the report, I think last year, it shows that we are way off track. So it's one thing for us to say we want to do something. It's one thing for us to gather in COP, but we are not sincere. Government in the global north, they are not sincere. They don't, I don't know how they want to do it, because deep decarbonization has to happen on their end. Because if you look at the percentage of emissions, it is still skewed against developing countries. How much are we emitting? Some people say it's not worth a footnote. But the question is, those who have the real responsibility for decarbonization should take it seriously. Not only seriously by ensuring that they reduce carbon emission, but they also put in finance to ensure that we get to the right temperature goal. And I keep telling people, if your finance does not match the kind of 1.5 degrees temperature goal we want, we will still not get there. Your responsibility, your determination, and your finance must meet up with the temperature goal. As it were, the total finance that have been provided cannot meet up with the temperature goal that we desire. If you remember Code Red report by IPCC, I think it was just last year. Do you know what Code Red means? Is that everywhere is red. We can't deceive ourselves. We have less than 6 or 7 years for unavoidable climate catastrophe. So the time to act is now. And I believe that as we are all planning to go for COP, we should be ready to impress, influence, lobby, do all we can to ensure our government take the right decision on behalf of planet and the people. So I think the 100 billion, I think in a way I've answered it. That 100 billion, we have not gotten it. I doubt whether it's going to happen. Though there are some finance funds that have been opened. Of course, some people have started capitalizing the loss and damage finance. Of course, whatever they have given as we speak is still not enough. We are going through the second replenishment of the GCF. In the initial replenishment, we have over 12 billion. As at now, with the totality of the pledges that have come in for the replenishment, second replenishment of the Green Climate Fund, we have just a little above $10 billion. And you know, USA have not even contributed its own. Since the time Trump says it's not part of Paris Agreement. And as we speak today, Biden says he has come back. He has not put in any money into the replenishment. And we know what Green Climate Fund stands for. Green Climate Fund is that fund by which every country is going to implement its NDC. Now, how much is 10 billion compared to the enormity of climate impacts on ground and the loss and damage we are experiencing day by day? We need to do more. And I'm happy yesterday, 2 days ago, when I was in Ghana to meet with Al Gore, that was the only thing I told him. I said, I have listened to everything you have told us here. We want to work with you, but can you tell the American government to pay up its climate debt, put money into replenishment, put money into loss and damage funds? People are already putting money into it. They should support the vulnerable so that we can stop catastrophic climate change. And I was happy. And he told me, he said, Titi, I will deliver your message to the government. I'm so happy I was able to do that. And you, all of us, wherever you find yourself, where you can lobby and influence, please do that. It's very, very important that we had our voice. Maybe when they hear it from ordinary people like us, not even government and policymakers, I'm sure something will touch them and they will do the needful. So I hope I've answered all the questions, Madam Elizabeth. Is there another question I've not answered?
Yes, I think to the best of what I can remember, you have. But I was just typing a question in the chat box to say you've been hammering on influence. Yes, we'll go. Yes, we'll participate and influence COP. But then the question of how are we going to influence? It is not yet clear. The platforms that the civil society organizations in Nigeria, for instance, beside the gender constituency, what other platforms are there, for instance, like the youths that other participants going
could, or the way you are sounding, is it that everybody knows where they belong and what platform they're going to operate on when we get to COP? Then
Thank you, Elizabeth.
What are the informations? Let's we
are having a session on that
mobilization. Okay.
Madam Elizabeth, you know it's a training for 4 weeks, so there are different aspects. Next week, we are having new presenters who are going to delve deep into the major groups, what we are going to find on ground when we get to COP, how do we lobby, how do we advocate. There are people who are going to do that next week. So please stay tuned. Next week is going to be interesting. And I want you to keep a date with us on Wednesday and Friday next week. On Wednesday, we are going to have people tell us deeply what the negotiations are going to be all about.
Correct.
They are going to delve deep into the negotiations. And then, apart from the negotiations, they are going to tell us the major groups that we are going to be engaging with, which major groups you can go to. How do you also work with all the major groups also to know what we are going to be lobbying policymakers to do for us. And we are going to still have Nigerian CSO's position after this whole training. And I'm sure Boyega can give you a bit more about that, because we want to make sure that though we like to speak with one voice for those who like to join us. So at the end of the day we are going to have the pre-COP meeting, we are going to agree to a COP28 position by civil society of Nigeria, and all of us are going to sign to it, because we are not going to write on our own. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Maybe you may want to weigh in on COP28 position by civil society in Nigeria.
Okay, I wanted to say something again. I am not sure, I don't know.
Elizabeth, some of your people are still raising their hands. People want to ask questions. Please remember that this thing is being mainstream live on YouTube, Facebook. YouTube and Facebook. So you can also follow us on YouTube and Facebook. On YouTube is Century TWAP, and on Facebook is Center for 21st Century Issues. Once you get there, it's live, direct. And so please join us. Next week, please don't miss it. It's like we have lost Elizabeth. Chidi, can you take it up?
All right, fantastic. No wahala. So, like you rightly say, we should keep a date with us for next week. We're already having this is like the second week. We have 2 more weeks to go, and more interesting content coming your way on this particular event. It's a fantastic one. So next week, then the following week, we'll wrap it up. So we're doing the question and answer series. Titus, is this hand from the last one, or we're supposed to be wrapping up in any time soon?
It's a new one. It's a new hand.
Okay,
so
please.
Even though it is
1 minute,
hand.
if you can keep it under 1 minute, that will be fine.
All right. Thank you very much. This engagement is very, very, very impressive, and I need to let you know. My name is Titus Amanilewa. I'm not an NGO or CSO person, but I work with the Shirura power plant, a 600 megawatt hydropower plant located in part of Niger State. So, but I'm involved in a lot of climate change activities, clean energy, advocacy, and some other things like that. So, I was privileged to be part of the NCCC Nigerian, and like I keep saying, no one person, no one party can achieve this success. So we need that collaboration. So what we should be working with, how do we collaborate? How do we engage people? How do we talk to people? You know, you may not know who will help you out. So I think we should just keep stretching until we're able to get the needed contact, the needed help that we need. But I will advise that we extend our meeting to the NCCC, because they have a major part, to play in our sources as well. So please, that's just what I want to contribute.
All right, thank you very much. We definitely will involve them if they're already not already on the platform. We already will involve them because we're working closely with them. I believe Madam Titi is also working closely with them. Thank you very much. We're supposed to wrap up at 3:30. We're so sorry for the extra time that we've taken, 9 minutes of your time. But if you remember, we started a bit late, so this can kind of compensate for the time we lost from the beginning. So once more, I want to say thank you to everybody that has made this a success. Dami, thank you very much for putting those that are behind the scene, for putting in the hard work. Thank you, Titi. Thank you, Boyega. And also, I want to say a big thank you to Elizabeth, who was also my co-facilitator, and also to the conveners, Dr. Mr. Simire, Michael Simire. I still did not forget you. Please, I also want to encourage us to keep a date with this particular meeting that has been sponsored by Center for 21st Century Issues, Environment News Development Network, Society for Planet and Prosperity, and all this was made possible by the British High Commission. Once more again, I want to thank all of us for being here, and also thank all of us for staying till the end of today's
Don't forget
session.
group picture, please.
And we'll see us. Oh, Elizabeth, you're back. That's true.
Yep.
Those behind the technical team can take a group picture. I don't know how we want to do that.
So we have to put on
turn
our
on
videos.
your
Everybody,
video for a second or so.
Boyega, put on your video.
Sharing.
Okay, can we all turn on our
So
videos?
the technical people should just take pictures. I think Jumoke is there.
Just put on your video for a minute or two. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, fantastic. I think I
That's
can now
my sister from Sierra Leone. Am I right? Or Liberia? Wow. Thank you.
Okay, while we're still waiting for others to turn on the video, I want to say a big thank you to John Baki, to also Mr. Titus that has been on with us, Mr. Philip, Gloria, Mohammed, Praise Okoro, Rosette, I think I got that right. Precious, Ibrahim.
I like your jersey.
Thank you very much. Trying to be as patriotic as possible.
Oh, we are playing today, yes.
And every other person that has participated, and all those that maybe did not change their name and they left it as Zoom users. Thank you very much. So I think we can do the group photo now, so we can round up quickly, and we can all go for lunch. I think lunch is served at our various corners.
That must be a virtual lunch.
Exactly. So who is taking the screenshots? Are we good?
Yes,
support
we are
team.
good.
Jumoke, are you the one taking the picture?
Yes, we are good.
Okay, two for the two screens, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everybody. And please be sure to join other spaces that might be coming up this evening and later today for the build-up towards the COP. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, Chidi.
We are going to end the meeting now. Thank you, everyone.